Six Flags America was a struggling local amusement park until Six Flags began pouring investment into the park starting in 1998. In the first 4 years following Six Flags' involvement, the park would open a total of 6 brand new roller coasters. Six Flags America was slowly becoming one of the best amusement parks in the country, and its future was brighter than ever. Fast forward to today though, and the park is truly nothing special. In the last 23 years, the park has only opened 2 new roller coasters, both of which are nothing significant. Six Flags America was opening 1 to 2 coasters a year back from 1998 to 2001. So why have they only opened 2 coasters since 2001? What happened to the park? In the last 23 years, the 2 coasters the park opened in 2012 and 2014 were nothing special, with both of them being relocations from Six Flags Great America. Six Flags America was headed for greatness back in the early 2000s, but for some reason Six Flags decided to give up on this park, leaving it to fall lower and lower year after year. Why would Six Flags build up this park only to then ignore it in the 20 years following? This is the tragic story of Six Flags America, and though Six Flags may have neglected this park for over 20 years, they may be about to reignite it. Six Flags may be about to make the largest investment ever into this park. And over the next decade, we may very well see Six Flags America once become a truly spectacular park. Six Flags America got its start in the early 1970s. The park was originally intended to be built as an animal park by the 2 Stephenson's brothers, Frank and William, who were both animal trainers. The 2 had approached Ross Perot to request funding for the massive project, and Perot would agree to fund the project. Together, the 3 of them created a brand new company to run the park, which would be called CT Industries Inc., and in 1972, they would purchase 280 acres of land in the DC area in Prince George's County, Maryland. They began working on early development plans, but by 1973, they would hand over the plans to ABC's Scenic and Wildlife Attractions Division. ABC would get the park open in 1974 as a wildlife drive-through experience, calling the park the Wildlife Preserve. Visitors would drive through the safari in their cars, getting a chance to view the various rare animal species throughout the safari. ABC was hoping the park would bring in 850,000 annual visitors, but the park didn't come anywhere close to that in its opening year. ABC would move to announce a $30 million expansion to the park, which adjusted for inflation is $187 million today. For the 1975 year, ABC would add a brand new option for guests visiting the park. Guests would be able to board 150 passenger train vehicles that would take them through a guided tour of the park and its wild safari. In early 1976, ABC would cancel the rest of their expansion plans and close the park permanently, stating that they'd experienced unacceptable attendance and profit margins during the 1974 and 1975 years. It had been rumored that ABC lost over $4 million alone in 1975 from operating the park, which adjusted for inflation would be approximately $23 million in 2024. ABC would allow the park to stay open during the 1976 and 1977 years with less staff and lower expenses, and would close the park permanently in 1978. While the Wild Safari was off to a rough start, things would slowly begin to get better from here. In 1980, a few local businessmen would purchase the Wild Safari Park from ABC, and they would invest $11 million, $41 million adjusted for inflation, to get the park open. In June of 1982, the Wild Safari Park would reopen under the name Wild World, with a couple of new additions to help boost park attendance and revenue. Guests visiting Wild One would now have a bunch of rides to enjoy, as well as a couple of water slides. Wild One now included 3 flat rides, 2 kiddie rides, and a carousel, along with 4 tube water slides, 2 body water slides, and a children's play area. With the addition of the small amusement park and water park to the already existing safari attraction, Wild One would have a slightly better year in 1982 in terms of attendance and revenue when compared to the ABC days in the 1970s. The park was still a long way from becoming profitable though. In 1983, Wild One would open 4 new flat rides, including a pirate ship and a giant swings ride. The area would also see the addition of more water slides and a giant $20 million wave pool adjusted for inflation, making the water area a full-fledged water park. The park's attendance would improve once again in 1983, but the park would still not come close to breaking profitability. During the 1983 season, the park would close the drive-through safari, offering only a guided train tour. The tour would take guests through a few areas of the safari before making its way to Safari Village. There, guests would be able to see elephants and camels, as well as get pony rides or visit the petting zoo. Safari Village would also offer various eateries and a variety of games, of which the popular ones would eventually get moved to the main park. After the 1983 season, Wild One would make a series of changes to the park to try to break profitability. Firstly, they'd sell all the animals that remain at the park, and in early 1984, they would remove most of the adult rides from the park, putting all but 3 in storage. The park left its kiddie rides open, and most importantly, the water park. Wild One was going to try to focus on the water park side of things, hoping once again to break profitability. The park ran into one major issue though. Now that they were solely focused on water rides, attendance would swing a lot based on weather. This would lead the park to bring back the rides out of storage for the 1985 season. In 1985, the park began looking into building a wooden roller coaster for the 1986 season. The park also wanted to invest in a 3,000-seat amphitheater, as well as a camping area offering guests the option to stay the night. The park wasn't able to afford to build a ground-up wooden coaster, and they began looking to see if there were any other options. Nobel's in Pennsylvania had just purchased a used wooden coaster, and this gave the park an idea. They began looking for used wooden coasters that were for sale, and eventually they found an old PTC wooden coaster that had been standing but not operating since 1917. The park jumped on the opportunity to acquire the old wooden coaster, and was successfully open at the park the following year in 1986. The coaster will be named the Wild One and would sit in an area that used to be part of the Animal Safari. In 1986, the park would also open a kiddie coaster, rounding out their lineup so everyone in the family could enjoy the park. At this point, the park was seeing moderate success, and in 1987 they would open another water play area as well as a lazy river. 1988 will bring the addition of a few new rides, and the park would also take the time to revamp some of their old buildings and pathways. It seemed Wild One was finally headed for success, but there would be many more obstacles the park would have to face in the coming years. Before we get to the wild things that happened to Six Flags America next, I wanted to thank you for watching this video. I've been putting a ton of time and research into my content lately to try and make the best videos I possibly can. If you're enjoying the video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. I have some of my best videos coming soon, one of which has been in the works for over 6 months now, and I would hate for you to miss it. I also made channel memberships available, and by joining you'll be supporting me, allowing me to continue to produce awesome content. You'll also get access to a ton of great perks, so if you're interested, click the join button below. In 1990, the park began having issues with many of the rides. The rides needed serious maintenance, and some of them weren't even able to be repaired. Things would only continue to get worse, and by the time 1991 rolled around, only 9 rides remained operating at the park. The park had been through a ton of ups and downs, but this was a major blow, and the owners were forced to put up the park for sale. The Tirka Group, later known as Premier Parks, would purchase Wild One in 1992. The park will be renamed Adventure World and would see the addition of many new rides for the 1992 season. In 1993, the park would open its second roller coaster called Python. The coaster was an old coaster Premier Parks had purchased from Six Flags called Lightning Loops. The coaster had operated at Six Flags Great Adventure a few years prior as a dueling coaster, but Premier Parks would split the two sides up, opening one at the new Adventure World and the other at Frontier City, where it still stands today as Diamondback. The park would also add yet another major addition for the 1993 year. Shipwreck Falls would open as the park's water coaster, where guests would ride up a steel track in 15-passenger boats before dropping down to a massive splashdown. By this time, the park was seeing major success, and it had even been ranked by an amusement magazine as the most improved park in the world for its third consecutive year. After seeing the success the park was having after the new influx of investment, Premier Parks would continue its heavy investment into Adventure World. In 1995, the park opened the first Vekoma suspended looping coaster, more famously known as a Vekoma SLC. The coaster would be named Mind Eraser, and it can still be found at the park today. 1996 would bring yet another new ride with the addition of an intimate drop tower called the Tower of Doom. In 1997, the park would open Typhoon Sea Coaster, a roller coaster log flume hybrid. This ride would later be renamed Skull Mountain before permanently closing in 2011. 1997 would also be the year the park would redo their water park, removing some old attractions and replacing them with newer slides while improving the kids' play area. At this point, Adventure World was slowly growing into a major successful amusement and water park, but the real excitement wouldn't begin until 1998. 1998 was a big year for the park and the chain in general. For starters, the park opened their newest roller coaster, Roar, built by Great Coasters International, better known as GCI. This coaster still stands at the park today. Aside from this major investment the park received, 1998 was also the year Premier Parks purchased the Six Flags chain from Time Warner. Premier Parks would rebrand themselves as Six Flags, and by the end of 1998 it was announced that Adventure World would take on the Six Flags name, getting renamed Six Flags America in 1999. The Six Flags brand was a lot more recognizable, and it would also give the chain the ability to utilize Looney Tunes and DC characters at the park. In 1999, the park opened a record-breaking 3 roller coasters. The smallest of the 3 was the park's brand new Zamperla kiddie coaster called Great Chase. The park also opened Two-Face, the flip side of a Vekoma Invertigo coaster, which later closed down for good in 2007. The third coaster the park opened was Joker's Jinx, a Premier Rides launched spaghetti bowl coaster which still operates at the park today. The 3 new coasters would bring the park up to a total of 10 roller coasters, competing with some of the best thrill parks in the country. Six Flags America at this point was on pace to become one of the top parks in the country. It was in an area of the country surrounded by massive population centers, meaning it wouldn't be too hard to attract guests, and the park had been performing pretty well for several years now. In 2000, the park opened a massive intimate hypercoaster called Superman Ride of Steel. The coaster was a mirror image of the Ride of Steel that had opened at Six Flags Daring Lake the year prior. Superman still operates at the park today, and it's probably the best coaster the park has ever had. 2001 will bring yet another new coaster, this time a Vekoma flying coaster model. The coaster was themed to Batman and therefore called Batwing. The park also added a bungee ride in the same area. 2002 will bring the addition of a few more flat rides, and 2003 will bring a new River Rapids ride called Blizzard Falls. The park would take a break from new additions in 2004, and in 2005 they'd begin to focus on fixing up the water park. The first thing they did was rebrand the water park from Paradise Island to Hurricane Harbor, all while fixing up old buildings and adding a giant new tornado slide. 2006 and 2007 would bring no new additions to the park as the Six Flags chain was going through financial hardship and the economy wasn't the greatest. The park would get one more water park addition though, with a brand new water slide opening at Hurricane Harbor in 2008. In 2010, the park would get their largest addition in a decade, opening Thomastown themed to Thomas the Tank Engine. The land was 3.5 acres large, instantly becoming the largest Thomastown in the country. The park would also invest money into their wave pool for 2010, but everything would spiral out of control in 2011.
Now, Six Flags Parks filing for bankruptcy. Over the weekend, that company reporting its debts of over $2 billion, despite the fact that Six Flags had more than 25 million visitors last year. So what in the world's happening?
In 2011, the Six Flags chain filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
New management took over the company about 3.5 years ago, and they inherited a tremendous debt sheet, and it needed to be addressed. As far as affecting the park, it's not going to have any effect at all. It's really something that's being handled by our corporate office.
After emerging from bankruptcy, the chain will go through a restructuring process, giving up the rights to many of their licensed brands. One of the brands the chain gave up was the Thomas brand, and Six Flags America would be forced to rename their Thomastown land to Whistle Stop Park. Post-bankruptcy, Six Flags America would get totally ignored. In 2012, the park would open Apocalypse, a relocated stand-up coaster from Six Flags Great America, and in 2013, the park would get the famous Bonsai Popline Six Slide Complex added to their water park. 2014 would bring Ragin' Cajun, a family coaster relocated from Six Flags Great America, as well as a new flying scooters ride. The park would also retheme one of its lands to Mardi Gras, renaming some of the attractions to better fit the new theme. The park got a Super Loop in 2015, a Water Park Edition in 2016, and a Star Flyer in 2017. The park would retheme their stand-up roller coaster in 2018, renaming it Firebird and adding brand new floorless trains, and most recently, in 2023, the park opened a brand new water coaster. Six Flags America was on track to become one of the best parks in the country in the early 2000s. But slowly, it continued to get neglected by the Six Flags chain year after year. Post-bankruptcy, Six Flags barely even invested a dime into this park, and it's quite strange. Six Flags America has a ton of potential, and as I mentioned earlier, the park is surrounded by a bunch of major population centers, meaning it would have a pretty easy time increasing attendance. The situation with Six Flags America is quite strange and quite similar in a way to Dorney Park's story. Cedar Fair had built up Dorney Park in a very similar way, only to suddenly start neglecting it in the late 2000s. The thing with Dorney Park though is that they finally got a new coaster for 2024, and I actually think Six Flags America's story may go the same way. I think Six Flags America will RMC Roar for the 2025 season. This will give them an elite top-tier coaster for not too high of a cost. I also think the park will continue to invest in park improvements, working on every area and making sure the park is in tip-top shape. I think the park will then get a new flat ride package in 2027, all to prepare it for the major expansion coming in 2028. The Six Flags and Cedar Fair merger really make a huge difference for the future of this park. I think the Six Flags chain was already seeing some major improvements under Salim Rasool, and I think that alone would have been enough to get Six Flags America back in the running for some new investment. But the new merger opens up a whole new world of possibility. With Kings Dominion right nearby now being owned by the same chain, Six Flags can offer a two-park pass that allows guests to visit both Kings Dominion and Six Flags America. The chain could then continue to slowly build up both parks over time to increase the appeal of the two-park ticket. If Six Flags America is a good park, then locals from the massive surrounding population centers will all visit the park on a yearly basis. When they are then offered an upgrade to a two-park pass that allows them to visit Kings Dominion nearby, they very likely will take that. Building up Six Flags America is not only going to help Six Flags America itself continue to grow, but it also directly drives people to Kings Dominion, assuming Six Flags offers a two-park ticket. Six Flags America is in an area of the country that has such major surrounding population centers that it could easily become one of the top-performing Six Flags parks. I think the future of Six Flags America is actually brighter than it ever was, and though this park has been through a chaotic 50 years, I think this time the park will finally become one of the greatest parks in the country. I think 2028 will bring a major new roller coaster from B&M. A high-quality, reliable capacity machine that pleases crowds will be the perfect addition to the park after RMCing Roar. The park might have to wait 5 or 6 years between new coasters after that, but I think they'll continue getting consistent high-quality additions over the years. Six Flags America may very well look like a totally different park in 5 years, and for the park's sake, I honestly hope I'm right. Six Flags America isn't the only park that its future is majorly affected by the new Six Flags merger. Some of the parks in the Six Flags chains are major winners as well, but others are big losers and may potentially even get sold off or totally demolished. Click here to watch my video on the winners and losers of the Six Flags merger. Oh, and in hindsight, Six Flags, maybe it wasn't a good idea to name one of your parks Six Flags America after already having a park named Six Flags Great America.